Hi, welcome to the next video on the Academy of Development. If you're here for the first time, my name is Sylvia and I'm a life and business coach. And if you've seen my other videos, welcome back. I have a huge pleasure to invite you to the new series on the Academy of Development, in which I invite successful people from different walks of life so that they can share their recipe for success with us. Even though my guests are so different in many aspects, what connects them all is that they're very, very inspiring people.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first guest is definitely an exceptional person. He's a double world champion in freestyle kite surfing, kiteboarding, and he's a happy father and a husband. And apart from that, he's also a successful businessman. He is the owner of the company Shinn World that produces kiteboard equipment. Shinn World was awarded the best board brand when it comes to the design, the performance, and the ethos of the company. In our second conversation, Mark will tell us about the luck. He will also give us an insight of whether you need to have official education in the business that you're running, and he will provide us with some very useful tips on what the bad and good tendencies in the business are. We'll also talk about different characteristics, different mentalities and cultural characteristics, and why they matter. Last but not least, we'll talk about the conflict.
In general, luck is just a word for bad preparation. I don't have any official education in business or in marketing or accounting or any of these aspects. And to be honest, I don't really do any of these things either. And although I don't have any kind of official education in business, what I can see is that there is a tendency in many businesses that you have someone in your company with a specific skill set, and they're successful in your company because they're good at what they have this skill set for. And there's a real tendency to promote that person outside of their skill set. The company is successful when everyone is doing what they're good at. And if the recruitment was done well, then everyone is good at doing what they were recruited for. Coming to Poland, it's not given. It's not reliably windy here. It's not, in the winter, it's not possible to go in the water. So I have to drive a lot to find good conditions. And it's kind of, it's more motivating for me. It's a challenge to find the good conditions and the good times. And when you achieve it, you feel like you've been successful.
Okay.
To be sympathetic, I think this is one of the keys to being a good salesperson is to have an idea what the other person is thinking before they say it, to feel how the conversation is going, to feel the direction. And I think for being a good negotiator, being a good salesperson, or even just handling relationships inside the business, this is a very good skill to have. There are national traits, and it's definitely important to be aware of them. I have had some dealings in China, and I think you could count on one hand the number of times a Chinese person said to me no. They always answer yes, because of it's their culture. It's and you have to interpret that yes, if it's yes, we can do it, or yes, maybe, or yes, no, that's never going to happen.
So there are 3 types of yeses in China.
In fact, I learned in China there's many types. And as long as the negotiation, the conversation is alive, no matter how negative it seems to be, it's not closed. But once the decision no has been made, to reopen the negotiation is a much more difficult task than to keep it alive. There is always some degree of disagreement or some degree of conflict within a company, but I think it's healthy, and so long as it's managed and not allowed to escalate and get out of proportion, then I think that's the way it should be. Because if you have two passionate people and they have two different opinions, there is going to be discussion and conflict, and because they're passionate, they're going to fight to the end to try to do what they believe. But if you have a good team, then it's possible to find a common way.
Mark, was there a specific time in your life that you remember, a day, a moment when you thought to yourself, yes, I can be the world champion?
There was. I remember I was in the first year of competing, and in fact, my second year of competing professionally in kiteboarding. Both years I was number 2 in the world, so vice world champion. And I remember so this was 2001 in particular, near the end of the season. I remember watching my competitors, knowing what I could do, how I could perform. I remember clearly after a competition where I didn't get the results that I wanted, I remember clearly sitting on the beach watching the sunset and thinking, if at the time I said, if I just get a little bit of luck, I can beat everyone here. No, when I have a little bit of luck, I can. Kiteboarding is a sport where you ride one-on-one. So it's an elimination. You ride against one person, they're eliminated, the next one. And I was thinking, there is every rider that's making this world tour, I can beat them with a little bit of luck. And I went, when the season finished, I remember I was back home and training, and it occurred to me then that it's nothing to do with luck. There is almost no luck. In general, luck is just a word for bad preparation. And what I've noticed, especially in sport, is that the better athlete you are, the luckier you are. And people sometimes have it the wrong way around. They say, oh, yeah, this guy is really good. Oh, he's so lucky. And you have to go, it can't be coincidence. Maybe it's because they're so good that they're allegedly lucky. And it occurred to me that it's, if you prepare properly, if you prepare your equipment properly, if you prepare your physically properly, if you're mentally in the right place, of course, things can go wrong, but I'm not sure that's bad luck. I think that's, of course, there is some luck involved. You might be in a taxi on the way to the competition and someone crashes into you, or, or the airline might lose your baggage, and there's some things that are outside your control. But in general, I think the athletes that perform really well in life, they absolutely minimize what can go wrong. Maybe not even consciously, but they don't put themselves in the position where luck can be a part of it.
And now it brings me to this question about the luck in business that you have, that you worked. Your company, Shinn World, was awarded the best board brand this year, right? Again, yeah. So first question, why did you choose this type of business? Why you're not making shoes, for example? So
I've been competing in sports all my life, in sailing, in windsurfing, in kiteboarding. And in kiteboarding, I was the most successful of all the sports I've done. And but I was relatively old when I came to kiteboarding. It was a new sport, so everyone started at the same time. But I was already late 20s. I had quite a good professional career, and to be honest, when I was even with my sponsors back in the day, I I was really focused on the equipment, on knowing what I wanted to ride, trying to improve what I wanted to ride. As it's part of the package of your physical ability, your mental state, and the equipment you have. So I was quite focused on the equipment side, and honestly, I know for a lot of people they think it would be a dream just to be able to live their life doing their sport, but for me, this is not enough. It's nice, but directly I'm on the water riding, or already my mind is like, this could be better. I would like to change this. I don't like this. I do like this. And I'll see someone else's gear and like, I wish I had that. So I was already kind of naturally drifting towards the more product side. And as I came to the end of my competitive career, uh, it was kind of natural that I would try to create my own brand, because that's what I had been working towards since a few years already. I don't have any um, I don't have any official education in business or in marketing or accounting or any of these aspects.
Mhm.
And to be honest, I don't really do any of these things either.
You have good people who do that for you, evidently.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate that I met my wife, Malvina. I was working with a company at the time, and the CEO of the company was doing MBA studies. And I went to a social event, and my wife was on the same MBA study. But before we met, she was completely involved in the business, not kiteboarding. She had nothing to do with the sports business at all. In fact, she was working in the automotive industry. And obviously we got along. We
Obviously.
started seeing each other, and slowly she became involved in my business. But she is, a educated business administrator. So, so most of those, more administrative, technical side of the business, it falls down to her. And my side of the business is the more creative one, so the product development and the marketing side. I try to avoid anything to do with cash flow forecasting and bank accounts and accountants, and even down to ERP systems. And I really try to avoid this because this is not my strength. You have someone you have someone that's very good in one aspect of the business. The temptation is to promote them into a more management position, and very often that means moving them out of the area that they were so useful to the business for. And I put myself firmly in that category. There are many people. I would say there are thousands and thousands of people that are better able to do accounts than me and better able to cash flow forecast than me, etc., etc. So I really try to keep myself focused at the parts of the business that I think I'm the best at.
That's a very valuable tip, I think, for the business owners or entrepreneurs, right? So to focus on the skill set and let people do what they're good at, and not necessarily try to fit them in other positions, because that's when the company in the end is losing. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I do like to read quite a lot, and I did read quite a lot about the development of Apple as a company, which I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but they have done their road to success has been impressive. And the current CEO, Tim Cook, he absolutely didn't follow the path of Steve Jobs at all. Not at all. He is an administrator and business planner, and he never tried to insert himself into the creative side of the business, and I think this is a really good example. He's employed the right people around him to take care of that, whilst he's kept focused on what he's best at.
Yeah, I think it's a great example that you used.
Mm.
As we're on the business side, you and Malvina used to live in Tenerife, right?
Yes,
You yourself used to live there for 20 years, is that correct?
that's correct. I moved there in the late 1990s. I moved to Tenerife long before I started kiteboarding, when I was still competing in windsurfing. Living in the UK, this is not a great place to be a water sports athlete in winter. So during the winter, I was going to the Canary Islands for winter training, and then coming back to Europe, mainland Europe, for the competitions. And after a few years, I remember I came back to Europe. The first competition of the year was terrible. It was freezing cold and raining. I had problems with my equipment, bad results, and just had one of those moments in life where I just said, you know what, I would rather be working in a bar in Tenerife and windsurfing every day than living in the UK being a professional windsurfer. And I made a very quick decision. I pretty much just drove to the ferry, went to Europe, and drove back down to Canary Islands. So I was living there because if you're into water sports, this is really one of the nicest places to be in the world. It has one of the most stable climates in the world, where the year-round average temperature is 21 degrees. There's almost no seasons. It's more or less endless summer, and it's a perfect environment if you want to do water sports. So that's why I was based there.
And if you don't like winter.
Right? Exactly.
But in 2016, you moved to Poland.
That's correct.
As far as I know, it was because of the company was expanding, and
yeah, we by 2016, my wife and I were both working full time in the company, but it was just the two of us. And I did have a business partner in Belgium, but around 2013, amicably we decided we wanted to take the business different ways, so we split up, and my wife came in to join the business with me. So we were working there, and we had a certain business model. It's we kind of ran the sales, marketing, and R&D side in Tenerife. We were producing mainly, almost exclusively in Europe, but mainly in Poland. And we had like third-party warehousing, so everything was shipped to the warehousing, and then it's a business model where you're just sending the orders to the warehouse, who pack and ship it. And it was, it's not a bad business model. The running costs of the company were low, the overheads were low, but there is a big restrictions on what you can do and where you can go with it. The Canary Islands is actually a VAT-free zone in Europe, which is done to encourage tourists to spend money there, to try to make things cheaper. But what it means is that it's outside of Europe for tax purposes. So as a Europe, if the company was based in Canary Islands, every product made in Poland and then sold inside of Europe would have to be, at least on paper, exported from Europe to the Canary Islands, and then on selling, re-imported again. So it's not going to happen. And we reached the point where we felt if we wanted to grow at all, we needed to take things in-house. So we needed to start warehousing in-house. We needed to expand our team, employ more people, and we wanted better control over our manufacturing. So that's why we have a son, and at the time he was very young, and it was we said, okay, now's the time to move, not when he's in school already, and then it starts to get really complicated for the family. Um, so we decided to come to Poland partly because I'd been manufacturing and working in Poland for quite some time anyway, and my wife is Polish, and she has good contacts in Poland, so it was kind of a natural decision to move here. And from my perspective personally, 20 years living the life based around my sport, and although it's incredibly important to me, it's no longer the most important thing in my life. So I decided that instead of living in a perfect place for sport and trying to make the business work, it would be better to live in the perfect place for the business. And I have to travel for my sport, but that's not the end of the world. And in some ways, I'm actually more motivated for my sport now because it's not on my doorstep. In Tenerife, I was living 50 meters from the beach. So, and when it's windy every day, you say, oh, I'm not going to go today. I've got things to do. I'm going to do that. I'll go tomorrow. And but coming to Poland, it's not given. It's not reliably windy here. It's not, in the winter, it's not possible to go in the water. So I have to drive a lot to find good conditions. And it's kind of, it's more motivating for me. It's a challenge to find the good conditions and the good times. And when you achieve it, you feel like you've been successful. Like,
Okay.
so,
Appreciate it more.
I wasn't expecting that, but I am more motivated for the sports that I do since we came to Poland.
Wow. And when it comes to the adaptability, was it easy for you to start living in Poland after having an experience of living in the UK, where your home country, Tenerife, which is Spanish, and was it easy to get used to Polish mentality, or what was most challenging, let's say, for you?
Well, I've been working in Poland for quite a long time with Polish partners, and so, and in fact, for a couple of years, I rented a place in Poland because I was here quite a lot. So, I knew exactly what I was choosing coming to Poland. I'm familiar with Poland. And I don't have any particular problem switching places to live. I spent 20 years in Tenerife. I spent quite a lot of time in Belgium when I had a Belgian business partner. I traveled a huge amount. There were a few years where I never spent more than 2 weeks in any one country in a year.
Wow.
So I'm pretty adaptable when it comes to moving around and living in different cultural environments. So no, I didn't really have any big problem, but there is a difference that the language with Polish has been difficult. I would say it's the biggest challenge because Polish is a very, very difficult language. My Spanish, whilst not perfect, is more than acceptable enough to do whatever I want to do. And in Polish, I did have lessons for a while, and I do still study, but the grammar is so difficult. It's difficult. I can understand large amounts of what's said, but formulating sentences back again, takes time. So,
okay. Mark, it is challenging even for Polish people.
So that's I would say that's been the biggest hurdle is
the language.
the language. But on the other hand, I also see huge changes in Poland since I started working here in 2000, and I think 2004 was the first time I came to Poland,
right,
or 2005. And I remember at the time, almost no one spoke English. It was, especially in working in the south of Poland around Krakow and Bielsko-Biała, was very, very rare to find anyone that spoke English. And now Poland has become much more multicultural. No, and you can certainly survive in Krakow without speaking a word of Polish. I would say, the most people there speak some English or a lot of English. Not so much in the smaller villages, but slowly Poland is becoming more and more multicultural, and it becomes easier and easier to live here in that respect. And of course, my Polish is still improving, so that helps too.
You said you're very focused and determined, so I believe we'll soon gonna have interview in Polish.
Yeah, it's our company works in English because we're trading internationally. So, in fact, I don't speak Polish very often. I don't have the opportunity to speak Polish very often because everything we're doing around the business is in English.
Right. And with the side question, but I'm very curious. And your wife speaks Polish to your son, or?
Yes, well, it depends. For my son, he's been a bit confused because when we lived in Tenerife, we always spoke English at home, and he was in nursery and they were speaking Spanish. So he was bilingual since he was born, but his grandparents spoke to him in Polish, and sometimes his mother spoke in Polish, but predominantly we were speaking English around him, and Spanish when he was outside the home. And then when we came to Poland, he went into all Polish speaking, and he struggled with this a lot. So we were advised that it would be better if Malwina, my wife, spoke to him in Polish to try to develop his Polish. Now his Polish is, he's Polish and English, he speaks fine. He's 7, so now the rule tends to be if we're all together, we're speaking English, and if I'm not there, then they're speaking Polish. It's not it's really difficult for children because adults are judged a bit differently, but children, their level of intellect is very often judged on their ability to speak and communicate. And the inability to communicate is very often interpreted as a lack of intelligence or a problem in learning. And it's something that we've experienced in Poland, and quite often had to say to people, teachers, whatever, in our son's life, to say, is this problem you're talking about a communication problem, or is this an intelligence problem? Because at that age, it's very hard to separate the two.
I would like to come back for a moment to you living in different countries. That means you have, like you confirmed, you have huge adaptability skills. Does understanding different mentalities, different cultures, is it helpful in doing business?
I think it's. I think if you're doing business in, it's an interesting thing. Are we talking about like national characteristics or just being able to read people's characteristics?
Huh.
I think the ability to understand people, say read people is maybe the wrong word, but to be sympathetic. I think this is one of the keys to being a good salesperson, is to have an idea what the other person is thinking before they say it, to feel how the conversation is going, to feel the direction. And I think for being a good negotiator, being a good salesperson, or even just handling relationships inside the business, this is a very good skill to have. There are national traits, and it's definitely important to be aware of them. A very good example is in the language is the way that people translate. And I have this firsthand when I first started working with some colleagues here in Poland. and I would get an email and I would read it and I would go, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Why are they being so aggressive? It's like,
Okay.
this is not necessary at all.
Mhm.
And I would speak to them and say, what's the problem? What's going on? And they would look at me strange and say, there is no problem. Why are you getting upset? And you realize that if you translate, for instance, Polish into English, if you translate it word for word, the feeling of the sentence changes. And in the case of Polish to English, if you translate it directly, it becomes very aggressive. And it's just a question of grammar and vocabulary, that what is perfectly normal and polite to say in one language when you translate it isn't. And I think that's a large part of when we talk about multicultural society. For me, that's a large part of it, is understanding these idiosyncrasies of why it happens, and not to be offended, to understand that this is just a translation problem, not an attitude problem or someone being overly aggressive. So I think if you're dealing in business with many different countries, you have to be aware that these things can happen. I have had some dealings in China, and I think you could count on one hand the number of times a Chinese person said to me no. They always answer yes, because of it's their culture. It's and you have to interpret that yes, if it's yes, we can do it, or yes, maybe, or yes, no, that's never going to happen.
So there are 3 types of yeses in China.
In fact, I learned in China there's many types. But it definitely, it's, if you want to be successful dealing with different nationalities, you have to learn the traits of those nationalities.
And like you said, the ability of understanding each person's needs, right? And reading them, which I think it's a good way. I have positive connotations with this. So understanding their needs, this is even more important trait than the national characteristics.
Yeah, I think it's in any kind of, not just in business, in life, but particularly in business, understanding what the other person wants and being able to guide the direction of the conversation or negotiation in the correct way. I spent a little bit of time when I was young working for Nestle company. And I remember one piece of advice given about sales was that the salesperson is to do everything to avoid the word no, because once it's said, it's almost impossible to go back. And as long as the negotiation, the conversation is alive, no matter how negative it seems to be, it's not closed. But once the decision no has been made, to reopen the negotiation is a much more difficult task than to keep it alive. And I think that's an example, the ability to understand where people are going with their thoughts and whatever, and to be able to guide the conversation the way you would like it to try to achieve what you want to achieve. Whether that's in like a sales negotiation, or even just inter-office negotiations, trying to get other people to do things that they're not comfortable with initially, or just irrationally against. Or I think it's important to be sensitive to other people's feelings. Is not really the right word. Position, let's say.
Right. And needs?
Yeah, I think needs a little bit less in a business environment, because the most important thing in a business environment is what the business needs. It's business is this kind of organism that exists, and it exists from the people around it, and you're there to give what the business needs. And of course, the people working need to be happy and motivated, and in order do what the business needs. So, everyone has needs, but I don't think it's the prime thing. I don't think creating a company where everything is laugh and smiles and everyone is friends, I'm not sure you would have a very successful company. There is always some degree of disagreement or some degree of conflict within a company, but I think it's healthy, and so long as it's managed and not allowed to escalate and get out of proportion, then I think that's the way it should be. Because if you have two passionate people and they have two different opinions, there is going to be discussion and conflict, and because they're passionate, they're going to fight to the end to try to do what they believe. But if you have a good team, then it's possible to find a common way,
And it's a way of challenging, right? The ideas. To
Yeah.
get the best one for the company.
Yeah. So, and it's normal. The salesperson want the product that they can sell the most of because they're a salesperson.
Yeah.
The product designer wants to make the most advanced product possible. So those two things are not always aligned. The logistics department want to have the minimum number of pieces involved to have the smoothest supply chain. The factories want to have the production as simple as possible because that's what. So everyone has a different position, but when the company is working well as a team, there's a way through everything.
This is a very useful piece of advice, of insight that you gave us.